Hello and welcome to me DIYing stuff I randomly found on the internet and wanted to see if I can make it for cheaper. Patent pending. So for today's episode, I'm going to be making these wired outline vases or vases, however the f you say that. I did originally see this on Twitter, but since then I've seen it on Pinterest, I've seen it on Instagram, I've seen it on Facebook, and I haven't seen anybody do a tutorial on how to do it on here, so I just wanted to give it a try. Maybe that's because it's such a simple design, but I still wanted to give it a go, so if you guys are interested, keep watching. And if you are more inclined to actually buy this versus making it, I will leave a couple stores in the description box down below that I found online that do sell these. I'm starting with a thicker gauged wire, a thinner gauged wire, pliers / wire cutters, a steel stick, which is a metal epoxy, black acrylic paint, just some paper plates that are disposable, or another surface you feel comfortable painting on. Paintbrushes. Now this is where we start off, and this is going to be with the thicker gauged wire. The thicker gauged wire is going to be what the actual outline is made out of. Depending on the gauge of your wire, you may be able to cut it directly with pliers or the wire cutters, or you might have to bend it back and forth a few times. So I've got the base, I've got the two sides. I'll be adding the top into play once I have better dimensions added into it, because the length and width of the top is obviously going to depend on the spacing between the two sides. I made a line for one side, and then once I had that cut out and shaped properly, I took the wire and made it so I basically copy and pasted it, but in real life, by following the same curvatures, and then cut that loose. Now it was time for the top. To put this all together, you could use something like a welder set, and I might get that in the future for another project. The welder set could run you up about 25 to 30 bucks or more depending on where you're getting it from. But for now, I just wanted to go in with my steel stick because I already had it on hand. So in order to use this epoxy, you have to cut a portion off, or you can use the whole thing, but I find cutting portions off definitely works in the long run because you have more of a working time, because once you mix them, they tend to bond pretty fast. Although it is a hand mixable epoxy, I would probably recommend more either wearing like latex gloves with it or nitrile gloves with it, because as you can see, my hands get really dirty. And then adding it where the two edges meet. Now at first I'm just putting this on, and I'm going to be surrounding the edges and then cascading it down both sides from there so it doesn't look as concentrated and it's a little bit more uniform. The easier way to do this is going to be to make a little worm with it, flatten out the worm, cut the worm in half, and then place one on one side and one on the other side of it, and then just blend from there. Then it was time to decide whether the sides were going to go on the inside or the outside. I needed to decide which side these sides were going on, in or out. And in the end I chose in because I thought it would look a little bit more clean. And with the thinner gauge wire, I used that once again to just go around and around and around where any seams, let's call them seams, would meet. This is going to add some more stability because I find that this is a very unstable project because all the pieces that it's made out of are very thin. So I just wanted to add any stability and all stability that I possibly could without chunking it up too much. Using the pliers to add some pressure all around it to really squeeze it together and hide away the stabby ends. Back in with that steel stick and repeat. So with these ones, before they had completely solidified, I actually pushed them down on the table so that they would have a little bit of a flat bottom to them, so they'd be a little bit more self-standing. And if you do need a little bit more reinforcement, don't be afraid to add some glue. I definitely wanted to add a little bit more just because, again, it's not the most sturdy project in the world. And finally, time for the paint job, to make it look a little bit more uniform and kind of just hide the bulges. That was a really uncomfortable sentence. Taking you back to the book table that I made, if you did see that, if you didn't, I'll link it down below, but I found out really quickly that silver actually shines through black quite a bit, so I did want to do 2 layers of this. And this is just a black acrylic paint, but if you do want it to have a glossy finish to it, you can definitely just put a glossy top coat on top of it. And then it fell. Upon completion, yes, this doesn't look exactly like the one pictured, but it definitely does look close enough for me, and considering it cost me barely anything. I got this wire from Value Village actually, but I have seen very similar wire at the dollar store, so you can get it for like $1.25 or $1 depending on where you live. The paint I already had on hand, but that's also from the dollar store, and the steel stick you can get online, or you can just use super glue and just be very, very patient. But that is it for today's video, and I do hope you guys enjoy!